Okay, so we gave meaning to the words free fall acceleration. And we made a claim that all objects close to the surface of the Earth, if we neglect air resistance, will have this acceleration. So the gravitational force that the Earth is exerting on an object, on objects, is not the same for all objects. It is not the same on the bowling ball as it is on the feather. But the gravitational acceleration, the free fall acceleration, is the same for all objects. So what we would like you to do is you drew a free body diagram, force diagram, for an object that was falling. You remember in the second session today, you drew a force diagram for an object that was falling. Now what we would like you to do is to draw a force diagram for an object that we throw up. And I want you to draw the force diagram after the iron has left the hands of Stamatis. One drawing per person, so several drawings on the whiteboard. Okay? So I want you to remember that we are drawing the force diagram after the iron has left Stamatis' hands. How many objects are interacting with the iron as the iron moves up?
There are 3 objects interacting with the iron.
I see chick,
ni, kashi chick sumudus, kashi ni, kashi sumudus.
So let's take it one at a time.
That sumyora mindro sumlesa sansu ani redechin drawings.
Chick.
Chick shingin su.
Sai tenshik martamandu.
Gravitational force on iron by the earth.
Do we all agree that there is a gravitational force on the iron by earth?
The galagi sai tinshu resun sa ani sama motu US sai kolegi chabi tinshu diwa.
So here is the iron.
Di chak di chungu US.
And here is the gravitational force on iron by earth.
Ni di shuk di cha di gala se ko le tin shuk di ke yo di cha di res.
We all agree that this should be there.
Di gugur lan sama me du yo ras.
Okay. What other objects are interacting with the iron?
Ta chak dila ngobo shemba khari penju dewa cha de dos. Okay, some are saying hand, some are saying air.
Some say.
Hand, some say air.
Okay. So let's start with air.
Ta lung sunge jura, ta thangbo lung ne go chue indas.
Okay. So some people say that air is important for us to think about, and some people say I'm not sure.
Kashi karshi ur lawana lung di khechimbu re la jura kanda penju dewa chinge chik di chi yores. Kashi ki lung di khechimbu chigi yo mares.
For the iron, the interaction with the air will be there, but it will be small.
Ta chak di lung nyamdo penju dewa yores. Ine dewa yu de dewa ta ina chunju shuj res.
It doesn't matter though, since some people included it, we can include it.
Ta ine kheyo mares kheran su gi ta lung gi shu diyor la dugal dina ma chu shagos.
In what direction shall I draw this force?
Ta lung gi shu diyor la ra. Di shu di khajo khande shte ngu res. Downwards.
So many people say down, but I saw some diagrams that also head up.
Ta mangcheo e khar shi la na thanda lung gi shu jora ma yor sumudus. Ine remote khashin al kharityo shela na thanda lung gi shu di yat ten shas.
How can we decide in what direction the air will be pushing on the iron?
Ta lung gi shu jora di gay di cho khajo dende gay dos lan cha digala di nganjo khandes thaju shetu res. The iron is moving upwards. So the air is pushing it down.
Okay, so the iron is moving up through the air, so the air is pushing it down.
Ta kyan ju shesnan chewa na cha di ya dugu ras. Di la dani lung digi cha di ma bugu res.
I also know that if I'm in a car going to Gandon and I put my hand out, the air will push my hand backwards.
Ta ya gandin la do ai nas modana la. Angela hora cha di ma kyang wai na chilo la. Lung na kyang wai na cho di jo du wala lung gi shu digi la bo ma bugu ras.
So if this is moving up and I put my hand out, I will feel the air pushing it this way.
Ta ya dugu wai nas ra. Ani la ko di ma chilo kyang wai nas. Ani lung di ko chu la na lung gi video di shu di ma chu res.
So I will draw then the force on iron by air.
Ta di shu di khari cha de la na cha ga la shu gya wa che kya gen di su cha khandi cha de la na lung di cha de res.
Some people decided not to include that force. That's fine.
Kashi gi khari tha ju chir la wa na anda lung gi shu ju da di sime ta di chi res di ent gi res.
Some groups decided to include it. That's fine too.
Na kashi gi di anda lung gi shu di chi dus di yan chi na ent gi res.
So far we have two objects.
Ta thade char la zo khajur la na ngobu ni res.
The earth, the planet pulling it down, and the air also pushing it down.
Ta chik di khari la wa na ngobu ni la ra chik di se kula res se kule thin shu gi cha di ma thing gi res wala ra shu di thyanan shi ni lung di res lung gi shu di khachi la na thyanan shi ma pu res.
How about the third object? I heard some people say the third object.
Ta khashi gi ngobu sum yo reshe sons am sum yem ba na ngobu sum ba di khandi res. Hand, your hand, and he is saying frictional force.
Okay, so we think about my hand maybe and the frictional force.
Ta lakwa she ra an khashi gi darshu she sons di ni roas.
So, am I exerting a hand, is my hand exerting a force on the iron after the iron has left my hand?
Ta lakwa digi cha di ya yu ra. Ya yu sa je la cha di da la cha di ga la nge lakwa shu ge gi yor wes. Le cha lakwa le cha je la da ya yu cha je la. Cha di gang le ra di ga so. Lakwa le cha je la ra. Ani digi shuk lagbe digi shuk gegi yor reyo ma res the chair. No, it's not exerting any force. Yes, there is a force.
ngak ten khalana tata labe ngobu ya yundu labe ngobu ya yundu kharla ba na ngobu ya dro sai jela ya labe ki shu jogorela na jogo mares ina ngobu tela labe ki shu yoarela na yores penanda dos papenundu jiginda pandro sai jela ya jig shu yoarela na yores ina jidiki tata ko pandro dikos jidu shu yoarela na jogo mares
Ta ya yudu gala lagbe shuk di yor res nangbo gozuk du.
ngobu chingo laba ya yura ya yu sawe jela ya ngobu tela ya karsana labe ki shu de yorela na yores ina laba de shu jo yorela jo de yorela jo de yo mares jo jemba mares mama jo yores
Ta lagbe ya yug ra chak di ya yudu gala thangbo gozuk du lagbe shuk gegi yor res ra di jela ya le sayo jela lagbe shuk gegi yor la na gegi yo mares ine shuk di yor la na lagbe shuk di yor res lan di rish ra. So his statement is like when you throw an object upwards, like at the beginning you are touching that object and you are exerting a force, but when it reaches up, you are not exerting a force, but the force exerted by hand is still there.
Let's think about the evidence that we have agreed upon for whether or not forces are exerted.
The shuk gegi yor yo mare la jora, di ngara sungu ni pangda lengyo jora di gala kyar du drawing is.
So we have said that pushing on my hands, on my fingers, is evidence that there is a force that I'm exerting on the board and the board is exerting on me.
The pangda chi khari chayu lo na zugu di ma karbon la manne minus ra. Dile choyo kapsu ni zugu di ma karbon la shuk gegi re thana shi karbon di ni zugu la shuk gegi ro as.
Do we agree?
Dile motu yo yes.
After the hand has released the iron,
Ta lagba digi cha di lo sayo jelas.
is there any evidence that the hand is being squished?
Ta lagba zugu cirkyo ro jya thanda ngel pangda di lagba di cha di lo sayo jela pangda di yo res lagba cirkyo gi pangda di. No, it's not there.
So, is the iron exerting any force on the hand after the iron has left the hand?
Ta lagba ni cha di lo sayo di lo sayo jela ni thanda cha di gala shuk gya yo res lagba di. No.
Can any of you exert a force on me from where you are sitting?
Ta thanda kheran zo shuksa lo cha de da so shuksa ne ani stomatis la shuk gya tu res. No, we cannot.
So no, the hand is no longer exerting a force on the object.
Shuk thanda lagbe gi ngobo de la shuk gya yo ma res.
But I want us to think about the essence of that question.
Ta ine thanda thiwa jora digi ne de la ma dre di ta kheran zo samlo tang US di gala.
So we decided that forces are not something that you can give to some other object.
Ta shuk la jora di nganzu gi ngobo chik ni ngobo shimbal te la jora di yo ma res.
You cannot give a force to another object the same that you can give something.
Ta ngobo do nganzu chik di mish ngobo chik thanda chik ni shimbal ma te jora dile ngobo te ona shi shuk di tende te yo ma res.
It's just that force is not that kind of thing that you can give.
Dila du shuk la di thanda nganzu ngobo dende do ma res pha te yo dende ch ma res.
Two objects can exert forces on each other,
Ngobo ni penju kharche dur lawana shuk di tren thu res.
but no one can give a force on something.
Hine suchi gi shimba chila shuk te la jo dinde chitu yo ma res.
But though, if I think about it, I did give something to the iron.
Ta samlu dendish ta oinas thanda cha jura til ngi chik te res.
It is just that that something is not a force.
Ni chik te jo jura di chik di shuk chagi yo mares.
I exerted a force on it to start it to move,
Ni shuk gya res, shuk gya di khajin shuk di gya ni ani di yogu che go chu res.
but after it left my hands, I had no control over it. I was no longer interacting with it.
Ine thanda chak di la ko le sa je la ta chak di la ngi gi tang jing ke gu chi thwe yo mares. Ya la ba ni ma chilo le sa je la.
Tomorrow, we will find out what it was that I gave the iron.
Ta sangi nganzo khari share la oina thanda ngi gi ngo chak di la chik te re la jora chik di khari me di ha gu res.
But it was not a force.
Ine chik te jo di shuk mares.
I exerted a force to get it to start to move,
Ta di yogu che la ngi gi shuk gya res.
and when I stopped touching it, that was the end of the force.
Ngobu di la ko le sa je la shuk di cham sha sa res.
I was no longer pushing on it, it was no longer pushing on me.
Ni ngobu di la bigu yo mares ta na shu ngobu di ngi la ko la bigu yo mares la ko le sa ni.
But I did give it something, and we'll find out what it was tomorrow.
Ine ngi gi ngobu di la chik te res chik di khari me di ngazo sangi ha gu res. Sangi che gos.
So thank you for that comment.
Kerangi tanda songwa di la tushin na shue yes tuash tang sa ya.
So do we have any other object that we can blame for a force?
Ta shugla ani ngobu shimba yor res las di da dewa chag du la jara shugda. Ngobu shimba yor res tanda. Yes, there is frictional force. Frictional force.
So also some people said that maybe there is a frictional force. Which object is exerting that frictional force?
Ta kiransu gi darshu yor la ni she sonsra. Darshu yo wa ina ni ngobu khandi gi darshu tumbi yor res. By air.
Is that a different force than the force that we have already identified here?
Ta kiransu gi darshu di lungi res lan shera lungi ge yor res lan. Ta digang chik ten do. Chagla shu ge res lungi lan ge do. Di shu da manda or res undi. Logare dirang re. It's a different one.
I would like to understand how this force is different from the force that the frictional force that the air exerts on the iron.
Ta lungi darshu ji ge yor la jara ya cha digala. Di ge yor la di da dang mare sung ra. An dang me na khande stag yor mare lo khande chag yor res.
cha de ko long to dan ni yo la dan de long grand ma ne ja de la dan de darshi cha de ma long to dan ni.
Okay, this one is the force on iron by air, the push that is felt by the iron, and frictional force is felt by the iron by rubbing.
Isn't this a rubbing force?
This shuk chiten do. Di darshuk maru es. This is not a rubbing force. This is like the force created by push. The air is pushing on this iron, so this is that force.
This is my attempt at drawing a ball.
Ni thamshi chini remove tears di res ball you said, right? Polo res di.
So I toss the ball up,
Polo di ya you res.
and the air in front of it, pushes the air out of the way, and the air goes around and rubs it.
Ta tanda polo di ya tang du gala di dun shol do. Di gi lung di to down din to res. Polo dil dar ni de ma du res.
So when I'm in the car and I put my hand out, the air hits my hand and rubs on my hand.
tanga modern draw kapsus ya dugu yo aina lagba di ma kyang du khachilol kyang du gala lungdi lagba la khe resra di the kapsu lungdi lagba la dar dugu res.
Can you open your... So some air goes above my finger, some below my finger, above this finger. Some of it hits here and bounces off. Some of it hits there and bounces off. And all of that is a kind of rubbing.
The lung deni lira lagba la dawe kapsu khashi zugui gang ni dure khashi ki par tongbash to tongcha deni dures khashi dela dabni dendes dures todang deni dugu res.
So
Sama dargi res ra lagba dila.
if I were doing this in water, it would be a similar kind of rubbing with water.
Thana shingi di chuna chiwainas lagba di chuna ma lagba di kyang wainas di todang tharang res ya dar ni dugu res thande dela chu di dar ni dugu ra.
So this force is the frictional force.
Chesan dela shuk tungyo shtoa di dar shuk di chagyo res.
Do we have any other forces?
Ta shuk shimbal ha do sa dinala shimba shuk yo re shimba. There is no other forces.
No other objects interacting with the iron. No other forces.
Ta cha dinyam do penju dewa chingi ngobo yo marwa shimba dila do kala ani shuk shimba yo maresta tama.
So suppose I was doing this experiment in the tower where the ball and the feather fell.
Ta ngoi la khangba juya dig nang lo la thanda polo da chado ma yuimba dig khangba dinal taje di chewainas.
What would happen to this force?
Di shuk dila khari chungres. La di shuk jida ten shuk ra se khole ten shuk di chagal ge jodi dila khari chungres di shuk dila chipa it will be the same.
What would happen to this force?
Di shuk jida dil khari chungres chiu jegre zero it will be zero.
So let's think about that for just a moment. If I were to show you this force diagram for an iron that was moving in the tower, would you be able to tell me if the iron was moving up or if it was moving down?
Ta danda khangba juya dinal takje di chiwainas an cha di ta kiran zu shetu res cha di yogu chidu gala ma sarudu yana ya dugu la jora di kiran zu shetu res. Yes, we can.
How would the diagram be different for an iron that is moving down in a tower?
Ta danda khangba juya dinal takje chiyo kapsu kisi cha di ma sagi yo aina an dila remote yo aina khande ji chagi res. Khande shugi remote tiyo di tiyo aina khande sti lo. Tenshu yo res ra. There is this gravitational force ani la ma joro sagres. So the object, the iron falls with a greater speed. It falls faster and faster.
So if it was falling down, if it was dropped, then it would be moving faster and faster. But if it was moving up, it would be moving slower and slower.
Te kisi gang nillo ni ma sa wainas chadi. Joro sagruas. Kisi ya ta waina ya yu waina. Teru duruas ya du.
Would the force diagram be different?
Shugri mutira di tu waina mandao ji chagruas. Yes, it will be different.
How would it be different?
Keba yor jo dur lara. Keba hari dures.
This is not a force, it is the way that the iron is moving.
Di shuk tsungu yo ma res di daji do. Di khari tungu yo lao na chak di drodang ji cho jo ra. Ko le tugu yo me di tungu yo res.
We decided that that would be the force diagram for an iron that is moving up and slowing down.
Ta shuk gi mu thiwa in minus ra. Di khari tsungu yo lao na chak di ya yu wake up so. Ya yu thero dwe jo di tsungu yo res.
And this is an iron that has been dropped in the tower and it's falling.
And di chak di ma lu wake up so ani ma sai jo di tsungu yo res.
How would I draw that force diagram?
Ta del shuk ri mu thiwa ina ma sa du. Del khandesh tu yo res ri mo.
Why don't you discuss that in your groups?
And di khandesh sa yo le jo ra shuk ri mu di thiwa ina kiran zo rukan nang lo chudur chiro chis.
We are doing this in a situation where there is no air. We are doing it in the tower.
Ta thanda ni ni khangba jo lung chazang tu le jo ra di nan ta che chho nan shi du kala thande ne dang dil khar na lung yo mares.
In the tower, as the iron goes up, that is the force diagram.
Di la du kala thanda khangbe dinal ta che chho go du chak di ya yu gu yo di kap so ni shugiri mu di phagi dres.
In the real world out there where there is air, we said that there would be one additional small force due to the air.
Ta ngaran sui thanda khor yu jora dinala imbai na dinala thanda shugiri mu na la shuk chik thewali res di khar la na lungi shuk ya jo jora dili res chun chungaj.
So now I'm doing the opposite experiment. I'm dropping the iron from the top and it falls.
Ta thanda ani thanda ta je shimba di bet mandra cha di res tongcho di khar la na thanda cha di la ban le chhe jel ma sag do di ta je di cha di res.
I would like to understand what those arrows are.
Phagi da jiten dol da di khare khare da khare kar chungi ma de shi kya da.
nga tu ba ya to ya yi kar na di cha di to jo bu du res ini tere du res ile di bo ni ma sa dire sa sam di sa ko shme na.
Okay, when you throw this object upwards, it moves with a greater speed and then it slows down when it comes up. And then it starts to fall down, so it moves with greater speeds. And
So
moves faster
those
and faster.
arrows are arrows that indicate the direction that it's going and the speed.
The gyongche khagas tugu yemegi di chungu yorwelas na di. Yes.
They are not force arrows.
The shuk marwasa. Shuk marwa gyongche chungu yorwasa da de gui. Yes, it represents speed, not
It represents the speed, not force.
shuk chungu yo marwas di gyongche de rwas. Di khare gyongche re shuk re lagor. Gyongche chikura shuk marwa. No, it doesn't represent the force. It represents the speed.
Will you please talk with those monks over there because they have similar arrows? Do they mean the same thing?
Kela karan su da mamush thi da diro khunju phajo ruba dige thishas apha su chodur chiro chis karan su da thanda boji par do rem do taro chilas phajo le da mamush thi da khari me chodur chilas.
Okay. Is the force diagram chikpare or chikpamare?
Shugiri mu jora dela di chikwa chiri re mares phajo. No, it's not the same.
So, could we please have somebody come and draw the diagram?
Ta chikwa mares sung ra dini ni thanglang jipe ni di remove shugiri mu di thro chi das karbanga. Shugiri mu di karbanga di dela chik thro chi das. Okay.
Thank you.
Your English is much, 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 much better than my Tibetan.
그러나 인지디 이 fühle bet 야가도스.
사이 골라도 타 녀를 연구 요정 안에 텐슈 때 전부 태고레스 자도다 대인자 안에 텐슈 다데 린로레스
Since this iron is falling down, so the force of gravity is high, more over here.
안에 자도도 야 로디 자말 사이 골라다 카다 린로 요정 안 텐슈 용로레스 디 차네는 다 통어티바 인스
And in this situation, this iron is moving away from the surface of the earth, so the gravitational force is less here.
Would somebody like to agree with it or disagree with it?
Ta dila motu yana motu mes dila. Ne dishesh kya sa? Di shugri model motu yo ve neves. La. D. So this is the situation in which there is no air.
No air.
Now lung yo maris.
Do you agree that when an object is falling, the earth is pulling on it harder than when it is moving up?
Now the tama motu yo es. Ngobo di ma sagdu gapsu sai tinshuk di che. Karida durwaina sa tanda ngobo di ya tangwaina sra ya yugdu tinshu ni di durwaina ma sabdu gala tinshu di che yore mutun chi US me. Yes. Yes, they agree.
Somebody disagree?
The gap ne mutun men son yosars. Chik son fons. Okay, he doesn't agree.
Agrees or disagrees?
Mutun yo megala. Mutun men son ba. He does not disagree. He does not agree.
Would you please tell us what your opinion is?
So whether the object is moving up or it's falling down, the force of gravity is the same.
So the idea that we just heard is whether an object moves up or down, the earth is still pushing it down with the same strength.
That kelahurani karshi usevana ngobudi ya dugu na re yoguchi du yana ma sagyo en re sai thinshu jura di shu di chibuchi gen gyagyo reslan shesons.
So what I would like you to do is I would like you to think of an experiment that we could do to decide if the earth pulls harder on the way up, on the way down than on the way up. We are not going to do the experiment, but let's decide what kind of experiment we could do to test this idea.
Ngobudi ma sadu gal thinshu cher la jura ya tawale di takche khande ji chugu yore la jura takche dende ji china ya budulan di thol samlu tangru chis takche khande ji chitu res ngi.
Let's not answer right now.
Ale thanda len di thanda gu mes.
Why don't you discuss it at your groups? So we have this idea that a falling object, an object that is moving down, the earth is pulling harder on it than if the object goes up.
Ta thanda nedan di khari shir lo ina ngobudi ma sawe gapsu sai thinshu di che khari da duaina ya ngobudi ya tangro ya yu we gapsu durwaina sai thinshu di ma yu we gapsu thinshu cher la jura di tholas kranzu dangu thodur nangro ches ruha nangro.
So let's think about an experiment that we could do to test this idea.
Ta di ta re mare la jura di choda chela ani mara so ta je khandi ju gu yerlan di to samlo tangro ches.
Something to think about to help you with your conversation,
ta kiran zo samlo ta la ti si robot o laura di pen la chik shi yes
an experiment I think many of you have done many times in your life,
ta ta che di kyan zo nam ju mang bu ji che sa res ta je khana
especially maybe as a young child.
ta kiran zo chun ju kap su ni che de yo de lis cha de res
You threw something up in the air and then you caught it.
nam la ya yu ra chala ya gang la yu ani chala di ma sa gyo de che ros
Something we've all done many times.
di mang bu be che sa ros ma ju
The time that it takes for the object to leave my hand to reach its highest point
ta di ngo bu di la ba lu ne che la ni khorang gi ya thoshu le sa je ros di tu ju dis
how does that time compare to the time it takes to fall from its highest point back down to my hand?
ta gang la dre tu ju ju ra di ro gang che se ni thoshu de ni ma rang ja la ba la sa bo de yan tu ju di ni duru ai na khande res you take the same time.
So think about that. I'm hearing some people say same and maybe some people not sure. Okay.
Kashi chikpar le do kashi ne thanda len ta da sta tim du thanda. Kashi yes, some of them are saying it's not the same.
So do that experiment at home tonight.
Ta thari di ta je sto so pasha la pene and di na ro che sta je di.
Remember, your physics teachers are asking you for a homework assignment. The only homework assignment we've given so far is to throw something up in the air and catch it.
Ta ngo gam ri bala nang le chikran chik ti yes di nang le di khar la na chala di ya yu le di ins nang le.
But maybe if you can, notice the time it takes from the time it leaves your hand to the highest point and then back down to your hand.
The kiran zo di ta je chu du thna che go khari chagor la na ngo bo di la bal le sa je le chhe je la ni ya thosho jura ne thoshe di le ba du thujo di da ani gang thosho di ni ma rang ja la bal sa je ra dini par thujo jura prani durgu gu res
And maybe you can count to keep track of the time or use a stopwatch.
kiran zo thujo thanda ka ju yo di phejo chini ya ta na ju res ta chi chu
We will continue this conversation first thing tomorrow morning.
ta di chodur ji da ta che di gan la di sang yi chode thang bo chu tu di go chu yis thoshe na